Okay, so this is my first ever FNaF animation retold. So it all started with all four main animatronics from FNaF 1. So Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie. But Freddy wasn't there. He was in his office. And yes, his office. Because when I first made my AU, for some reason, all the animatronics weren't actually animatronics. They were like humanoid animatronics, and they also wore clothes. And they also worked in an office building, and it was very strange. But yeah, so he was in his office because he's the boss. And so Foxy came into work, and Bonnie and Chica were already there. And then over the loudspeaker, Freddy was like, "Hey, Foxy, you need to come to my office." So then Foxy went to his office, and he's like, "Yeah, what's up, boss?" And then Freddy's like, "Yeah, I heard they're building new animatronics in this warehouse, and we're animatronics, so we're gonna go be their friends. So go to that warehouse and learn about them so that we can be their friends." And Foxy was like, "Ugh, fine. I don't like my job." And then he went there. First of all, he's a cheater because when I first made my AU, I was also very into ships. So he was dating Chica, and then he went to the factory, and guess who was there? It was Mangle. And he's like, "Wow, she's so pretty, I want to marry her." So he cheated on Chica. And so he's like, "But I need to power her on." So he's like, "Okay." So so he left the warehouse and went right outside, just killed some child that was there, and then stuffed the child into Mangle. Then she came to life. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Foxy. Please marry me." And she's just like, "Oh, Foxy? Where have I heard that name before?" "Oh yeah, the guy who created me, he said I was designed to replace Foxy, so I'm gonna replace you." And he's like, "Replace me?" And then she's like, "Yeah, he's building more. He's building more animatronics, and they're all gonna replace you and everyone you work with and all your friends and all that." And he's like, "Oh no, I need to tell Freddy." So he ran back to the office building. And he's like, "Freddy, they're trying to replace us." And Freddy's like, "They're trying to what?" And then he got cut off. And then because Mangle broke down the door because she was there, and now Toy Bonnie was with her. She's like, "Yeah, that's right. We're trying to replace you." And then I don't remember what Toy Bonnie said, but he said something dumb, because the next thing I remember is she jumped super high into the sky and then did a backflip in midair. And then fell back down and just looked at Toy Bonnie and was like, "Boo!" And then he had a heart attack. And Freddy just in his mind was like, "Ooh, I should do that." And what does that have to do with the story? I have no idea. So it cut to the sewers, and Bonnie was in the sewers for some reason, and he was walking down there. He was trying to find Chica because she went missing while trying to find Foxy. So he's like, "Hey, Chica, where are you?" And then while in the sewers, he ran into Purple Guy who had an axe. And then Purple Guy just beat him to death and turned him into Withered Bonnie. And then he was screaming high pitched because he got beat to death with an axe. And so Freddy and Foxy came running there. "What's wrong?" And he's like, "This Purple Guy just beat me up." And they're like, "Oh no, that's terrible." And then there was more screaming. So then they went to that screaming, and that was Chica. And she also got beat up by Purple Guy. And you'd assume she turned into Withered Chica, but she didn't, because when I first got into the fandom, I was very dumb. And I didn't know the difference between the Wizards and the Phantoms. So she actually turned into Phantom Chica. And so did everyone else. Only Bonnie turned into Withered Bonnie. So then there was "Oh no!" And then Freddy got beat up somehow, and then it was just Foxy left, and he was about to have this epic fight with Purple Guy. They did have the fight, but then he was losing, and Chica and Bonnie were like, "Oh no, he's losing. He's gonna turn quote-unquote withered too." Then, first of all, they levitated in midair and flew, and then they turned into a chandelier. I don't know what I was thinking when I made this. This chandelier made of animatronics amazed Purple Guy, so then he just stopped beating up Foxy, and then Foxy was just "What is happening?" And he's like, "Get down from there, you're being idiots." And then Purple Guy's like, "How dare you ruin the chandelier show that I'm trying to watch." So then he beat up Foxy, and then just went back to watching the show. And then he left, because then they stopped being chandeliers. And they're like, "Dang it, now we're all withered," quote unquote. Then the toys came back, and they saw Freddy, and they're like, nope. And then they just left, except Toy Chica. They left Toy Chica at the office building. And then Toy Chica just entered the office building, and was being mean to her because she was a toy, and they don't like the toys, except Bonnie because he's nice. So then he was just like, hi, and she's like, hi. And then Purple Guy came out of nowhere, still with Zax, and he's just chasing after them like he's gonna kill them. So then they just started running away, and then the worst thing happened. Then I left you on a cliffhanger. I just ended the video, and there's never a part 2 to this. There was, but the part 2 had nothing to do with part 1. So who knows if they died? The end.